let's look at how the Canadian national team plays. We will break down their attacking setup, as well as their defensive system. In attack, Canada plays with a clear style based on continuous movement and high speed. They rely on exploiting space, more than keeping possession. Their build-up play usually starts from the two center backs, who spread wide to open up the pitch, while the defensive midfielder drops between them, to offer an extra passing option. If the opponent presses them high, they do not hesitate to play direct long balls to the striker or the winger. However, if they have time, they start the build-up with short passes until they break through the opponent's press. The most defining feature of their attacking system is the constant movement of the midfielders and forwards. There are no fixed positions. A midfielder will drop between the lines to receive the ball. The winger will cut inside, and the striker will drop out of the penalty box to drag a center back with him, opening up space for another teammate. This constant swapping of positions makes them extremely difficult to mark. Every time you look, a player is in a completely different spot. Many times, you'll find the striker dropping back into midfield, the winger cutting inside to play as a center forward, or a central midfielder being the one who actually attacks the penalty box. Both fullbacks play a huge role in the Canadian attack. They constantly push forward to provide width on the flanks, allowing the two wingers to cut inside. This specific movement creates massive chaos in the opponent's formation, forcing their defense to stretch wide. And then, Canada exploits the gaps created between the defenders. When the ball goes wide, they don't just rely on crossing. Instead, they try to play quick 1-2s and triangles between the fullback, the winger, and the midfielder. This allows them to break the pressure, enter the penalty box, and create dangerous overloads. One of their most dangerous attacking weapons is their vertical movement. The moment a central midfielder finds a bit of time, he immediately looks for a direct pass to break the defensive line. Their forwards constantly make runs between the opponent's center backs and fullbacks, always looking to attack the depth. Before the defense can drop back and organize, they don't circulate the ball too much. The moment the first opportunity appears, they attack. They play forward very quickly, and this is exactly how they manage to punish teams with solid defensive blocks. Another crucial aspect of their game is how they exploit attacking transitions. This team becomes extremely dangerous the very moment they win the ball back. Their counterattack starts immediately, without holding onto the ball. The central midfielder tries to play a vertical pass from the first touch, while the striker and wingers take off at maximum speed into the open spaces. With just 2 or 3 passes, you'll find them already inside the opponent's penalty box. It is this incredible speed in transitions that makes them so lethal. They push a large number of players forward, even into the penalty box. When they cross the ball, they don't just have one striker waiting. Instead, you'll find a midfielder attacking the second post, the winger making a run to the near post, and the fullback arriving from behind. This massive numerical density inside the box aims to distract the defenders and create space for a player to shoot or receive a cross. Because of this setup, they exploit cutbacks wonderfully. Instead of playing high crosses, they pull the ball back to the edge of the penalty box, allowing a midfielder arriving from behind to strike it. Additionally, this team relies heavily on switching the play. Within seconds, they can shift the ball from the right flank to the left flank. This rapid switch helps them find isolated players in 1v1 situations, especially since their wingers stay wide to stretch the pitch. This constant shifting forces the opponent's defense to move laterally all the time. And as the game goes on, gaps open up, which Canada exploits perfectly. In short, the Canadian attacking system is built on 5 key pillars, building up from the back, continuous movement and swapping of positions, maximizing the full width of the pitch using fullbacks, rapid vertical attacks into depth, and lethal counterattacks immediately after winning the ball. This style makes Canada a highly dynamic team that is incredibly difficult to mark, since their players never stay static. Their attacks can transition to the opponent's goal in just a few seconds if they find the right spaces. Now, let's look at their defensive setup. Canada does not rely on a single defensive style throughout the match. Their approach changes depending on the opponent and the phase of play. Mostly, when the opponent tries to build up from the back, Canada attempts to press high from the front. But this is not done randomly. The forwards start by closing passing lanes to the midfield, trying to force the play toward the flanks. This is because Canada believes that winning the ball back on the wings is much easier than doing so in the middle of the pitch. The first forward presses the ball carrier, while the second forward blocks the passing line to the other center back or the defensive midfielder. At the same time, one of the central midfielders steps up to mark any player dropping between the lines. The goal here isn't necessarily to win the ball back instantly, but to force the opponent into playing a long ball, or risking a very difficult pass. However, if the opponent manages to break this first line of pressure, Canada immediately drops into a mid-block. This is where their defensive organization truly shines. Their three lines become incredibly compact, leaving zero space between the defense and the midfield. The distance between the lines is kept short, ensuring that any opponent who receives the ball between the lines will instantly find one or two players pressing him. This extreme compactness makes it very difficult for the opponent to play vertical passes, forcing them to shift the ball to the flanks or play it backward. One of Canada's core defensive principles is defending space rather than man marking. They don't follow the opponent everywhere. Instead, each player remains responsible for his zone. If an attacking player enters a zone, the closest defender steps up to mark him, and if he leaves it, the next teammate takes over. This specific approach allows the team to maintain its structural balance and prevents them from being easily dragged out of position by the opponent's movements. When the ball reaches the flanks, Canada intensifies its pressing pace. The fullback immediately steps out to pressure the ball carrier, while the winger drops back to support him. Together, they form a defensive duo, and a central midfielder moves close to block any passing lane inside. The ultimate goal here is to trap the attacker in a 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 situation, forcing him to either lose the ball or pass it backward. This collective pressing on the wings happens frequently, and it is one of their strongest defensive weapons. Inside the penalty box, Canada focuses heavily on protecting the central depth rather than guarding the wide areas. This means they intentionally allow the opponent the opportunity to cross, but they ensure they are fully prepared to win the aerial duels, with their center backs staying tightly positioned near each other, while the defensive midfielder drops between them to block any low cross to the striker. Even when a cross comes in, one defender focuses entirely on the ball, while the second tracks the movements of the forwards, ensuring they leave no space for a shot. What also sets Canada apart is their speed, especially immediately after losing the ball. For the first 5 seconds after losing possession, they execute a furious counterpress. 3 or 4 players will instantly swarm the ball carrier to win it back, before the opponent can even start to build a counterattack. If this press succeeds, Canada transitions into an attack again at maximum speed. However, if this initial press fails, the entire team drops back rapidly to reform their defensive block. They never chase the ball chaotically. Tactically speaking, Canada frequently transitions into a 5-man defense. When they are under heavy pressure, the fullback furthest from the ball will tuck inside to join the 2 center backs. Meanwhile, the fullback closest to the ball steps out to press. By doing this, they always maintain numerical superiority inside their own penalty box. This tactical shift makes it incredibly difficult for the opponent to find space in the central depth. As a result, the opponent's only options are reduced to crosses or long-range shots. However, despite Canada's strong defensive organization, they still have some clear weaknesses. First, their high press is not always consistent. If just one player is late to press, a massive gap opens up between the lines, allowing the opponent to break the entire pressure with a single pass. Second, because their fullbacks push high up to press on the wings, a massive space is left behind them. If the opponent makes a quick switch of play or plays a long ball into the space behind the fullbacks, Canada finds immense difficulty in tracking back and covering in time. There is also a clear issue when dealing with players who move between the lines. If the opponent has a smart player who constantly changes his position, a center back is often forced to step out to follow him. This leaves open space in the central depth that the defensive midfielder must close rapidly. If this coverage isn't perfectly timed, glaring gaps appear between the center back and the fullback. Any opponent with high speed and technical quality can easily exploit these spaces. In general, Canada's defensive setup relies heavily on collective organization, compactness between the lines, and directed pressing toward the flanks, alongside a fast transition between a high press and a mid-block depending on the match situation. It is a highly organized defense that is very difficult to break through if you play slowly. But against quick, intelligent teams, they can be deeply rattled, especially when the ball is circulated at high speed, with constant switching of the play and smart movements between the lines, particularly if defenders are forced to leave their positions to face one-on-one situations. If we bring all these details together to conclude this tactical analysis of the Canadian national team, we will find that this team possesses a unique set of strengths that makes it a tough challenge for any opponent. But on the other hand, they also have very clear weaknesses. So, do you think this Canadian team has what it takes to surprise the football world? Or will their defensive flaws be their downfall? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more tactical breakdowns. See you in the next video.